now I think we have our first speaker ready, Mr. Mike Bradshaw from Sampo Accelerator. So a really warm welcome to you, Mike.
Thanks, Damo. Now let's see if I can make this technology work. That one. Yay. Okay. All right, so thanks everyone for being here on time. And so I've got 50 minutes. My plan is to spend around the first 20 minutes going through some really what might seem super obvious core basic things. And then we'll look at some of the questions. So if you've got any questions, just pop them straight into the Q&A or into the chat, and we'll figure out where they all are, and I'll get around to answering, because I feel that 50 minutes of me talking about pitching will get really boring. Without further ado, let's get on with this thing. So, first question you got to ask is why are we pitching? And I spend a lot of time running workshops for mostly startups, early stage startups, but a number of different activities. And the first question I also ask is, why do I get invited to come and talk about pitching? And the first answer, or some of the most common answers, are it's all about investors. You pitch to investors. That's because we're dealing with startups here. Or occasionally the other popular answer is sort of, it's about sales. When you're selling, you should be using a pitch. And I don't think so. What it's actually about is marketing. Because when you're talking, you're marketing. And when you're selling, you're asking questions and doing active listening. The investors part, I'll come back to that later on, and we'll go into more detail about how pitching and investors work. So pitching is a marketing activity, not a sales or an investor activity. And so now I've said why are we pitching? And so now, what are we doing when we pitch? And the way I think of this is, other than a marketing activity, it's a short message that is designed to help you find that from the audience, who are the people that say, that's interesting, could you tell me a bit more? There are different ways of saying this, but fundamentally, if they're not interested, go and find somebody else. There are 8 billion people on this planet, and the numbers are rising despite COVID. So there are more and more people. Go and find the people who are already interested in your thing. If they're not interested, move on. Go and find the people who are interested already. And then you will have a much more fruitful conversation, rather than burning lots of time hoping that somebody will change from to, oh, that's cool. It rarely happens. So find the people who are already interested. Now, where can you pitch? Well, technically everywhere. However, if you're doing it on the bus, maybe not the best plan. Those are pretty much true random people. You can try it. It's an interesting approach, but there are some common places where you can use either a whole pitch or parts of a pitch. So the most frequent one is in the pre-COVID times, especially, and probably in the post-COVID times, at networking events. The online networking events are a bit, yeah. But it's the answer to what does your company do? Now, some of you will be able to remember back as far as 14 months ago and the last physical networking event, and the person you met and you asked them, what do you do, or what does your company do? And 30 seconds later, you're thinking, oh my God, kill me now. Please just take me. I can't endure any more of this pain. And while you're standing there smiling and nodding, and trying desperately to think of an escape plan. Because this is this person who clearly has not been thinking about how they pitch, how they explain their thing in a way that it's understandable to everyone. Then the second sort of great place, or most common place, is at conferences, either stood on a booth or in hallway conversations, which is very similar to the networking events. But you're stood on the booth and somebody says, oh, could you tell me a bit more about what this is? And then you deliver a pitch. And as you do this, you'll sort of try different phrases out, and you will slowly be improving it. And then what I would suggest is the best type of pitching is when you have prospects. So people who think they might be your customers, and how do you find them? Well, by pitching, by explaining what you do. So this is actually the most common places where people pitch, but they spend kind of the on-stage pitch. And that's what everyone panics about. You know, there's, oh my God, there's not enough time. I have so much to tell. You may believe you do, but the reality is the audience going to be interested? So what's the kind of the best thing for you to do? And it's all about preparation, the training. And why do we focus all the training on that on-stage pitch? Because that's the hardest one. That's the one that people are least comfortable doing. The stand on a booth, or at a conference, or talking with prospects, most people believe they're good at that because they get very little feedback. The on-stage pitch is where you get a lot of feedback. So it's the hard one. So this is the train hard, everything else is easy. So by looking at the on-stage pitch and taking the components of that, that makes standing on a booth or at a networking event, that makes that so much more easy. And what makes it easier to be good at stage pitching is deliberate practice. And most people do not do anywhere near enough deliberate practice. And they get horrified when they discover how much work it is to do this. Now, here's a suggestion from my experience of what I would count as one session of deliberate practice. You update the pitch to some new version. Then, by yourself, you stand and speak aloud into some sort of audio recorder. Most smartphones you can find a downloadable app to record just your voice. Two reasons. It's the words that are important, not the gestures or the facial tics. And you may say something smart and not be able to record it, so that you'll want to record that for the next time. So you record that audio, and then you listen back and analyze it for the things you did well. Don't worry too much about all the mistakes. You will make different mistakes next time. And you go through that loop a number of times, and that's up to you, until you're relatively confident that you have it down. Then you find your volunteer, a person who is willing to listen to your pitch and give you feedback. And you should ask them, could I have 10 minutes of your time? Because it's 2-3 minutes to deliver the pitch, and then 5 minutes or so for them to give you their thoughts and things you should do differently, things they understood, things they didn't understand. What are the questions they have after they listened? So, you know, the thing you're searching for in that feedback is, what did you not understand? And what are the questions that you were not answered? You take that feedback, and then you're beginning your next loop. And you should be looking for a new volunteer, somebody who hasn't heard you before. And when you're going for this, you're looking to do 20 to 50 of these cycles. So it's quite a lot of work. So it's not something you should be doing or starting the day before the pitch. It's something you need to start much, much earlier so that you can go through these loops. And sometimes the feedback will be, oh, this section is not clear. So that means you actually have to go away and do 2 or 3 days worth of work to make that thing clearer to you. So it's about deliberate practice, not just standing and talking to yourself in an empty room, which unfortunately, given the current times, is what we end up all doing. Now, over the years, I've seen that there are a number of different ways that people like to prepare themselves. And the most common one is the full script, where you actually write out longhand with a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper, and you write the script out, full sentences. You can also type it if you wish. And you write the full script, and people learn that script. Now, I'm not a fan of learning a script because you're not actors. You're not meant to be there on stage delivering something word perfect. But that's the most common one I see. Then there's the ones where they're sort of in the middle, where either you have a single word on a prompt card to help you remember what's the point, or you use slides and single words on slides, or, and this is a realization I came to a number of years ago working with a designer, is you have people who are visual thinkers. And that means that, you know, they use mind maps, or they draw images rather than words, and that helps them be reminded of what they're talking about and to plan the thing out. And then there's the small group, the group that is the rare ones, the 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 people who prefer to do it just like off the cuff. They don't need any slides, they don't need any prompting, they just go out there and they deliver and they make all the points and everything's great. They're pretty rare. But try out the different methods, see which one works for you. Are you more, I would like a full script, I want all my points written out, I want the sentences, how I'm going to say this? Or are you more, hey, I'm just going to go out there and wing it? And maybe I'll have some slides to back me up, who knows? So try both. As I say, the off the cuff, they're much rarer. Now, at the beginning, I was talking about, I said I'd mention about investors. And for you guys who are doing games, there is a similar group of people referred to as publishers, 50-60. There's not much kind of difference in terms of the preparation needed for what are you pitching, how do you impress them at a demo day or an opportunity to pitch. Now, your aim with the pitch is to find the person or people, if you're lucky, in that audience who says, that's interesting, let's talk more. And then you get a 20 or 30-minute meeting with them. And this is the more common thing that people will write articles about if you're going to Google, or other search engines are available. So if you're going to search for investor meeting or investor pitch, most people are writing about this 20 or 30-minute meeting. And this is actually a sales meeting, which means, remember I said, marketing is talking. What I'm doing now is marketing. But sales is about asking questions and actively listening to the answers. So if you're talking, you're not listening. So the big mistake people make is they have a 20-minute meeting, so they prepare 15 minutes of content. And then they go in and they deliver the 15 minutes of content. And the people in the room have heard 11 or 12 minutes of that content because it's the most common version from what they've heard in the hundreds of meetings they take that year. So it's not useful for them, and it's not useful for you, because most companies who are at a similar stage, most of the things are similar. You know, they're not different. So instead of doing a 15-minute presentation, maybe just do the 3-minute, the on-stage pitch, just to go over the main points. And then have support slides of all the things that you might want to have questions or might be asked as questions. And where do you find those questions? Search engines, or asking people who are more experienced. So you can prepare for what are the common questions, prepare some material for that. But one of the strategies that not enough people try is, rather than spending a lot of time preparing a slide deck, you're going there to meet these people. You're going there to interact with them. You're going there to have a conversation, a back and forth, an exchange of ideas and opinions. So go with no slides and be an active listener. Go with a set of questions that you're looking to have answered. How is this commonly done? Don't be going and asking things that are off their blog. If they've answered the question in Twitter or on their blog, or, you know, if you can find it with some Googling or, you know, searching, you can, don't be asking that question. But if it's not clear, or it feels unusual, or it's a surprise, go and ask the question. That you're there to learn about them as much as they're there to learn about you. So how did I learn all of this? How did I become an expert in pitching? It all started back in sort of 2010, the startup Sound Accelerator and the building that still exists there, and with presentation skills, and then learning all about the different types of pitching, through to App Campus, where I worked for a couple of years running their accelerator program and education, where we were looking at mobile applications and very much a lot of games there, where I learned more about how games are both the same and different from other startups. And for the last 3 years, I've been running Sampo Accelerator to help founders not have to learn the slow mistakes that everyone seems to have to learn, you know, like one at a time, and the same thing again. So what I do is focus very much on, let's get the fundamentals right. Let's get the basics right. Let's get you to be understood. There are lots of people who will help you with storytelling and wow and that type of thing, and being amazing. But being understood is actually a lot harder than you think it is. And I've watched many founders have to learn things the hard way. And so I kind of like people to not have to go through that pain. And you can Google or other search engines. So you can search around looking for things to understand, you know, many articles are written there. You know, it's 2021. It's not like it's the early 2000s where there was lots of secrets and everyone had to discover, you know, water is wet and fire is hot. This stuff is all kind of out there for you. So the final point before I jump into the Q&A is that if you remember nothing else other than preparation is it's content over delivery. So that means think about your message, that it's clear, it's understandable by everyone, the 7-year-old and the 107-year-old, so that both of them understand your messaging. Then when they talk to you, can you go into more industry specific technology and terminology, or is this somebody who knows a little bit and you say you should be there? Worry less about the delivery, worry less about stage presence and beautiful slides. Those come with time and more iterations and experience. And there's lots of things you can do there, but focus a lot on that content. And the content often comes from all the other workshops, you know, all the canvases and the talking with the lawyers. There's a lot of these little details that may not appear in the pitch, but they all support the pitch. So that's everything I was going to talk about. And let's see, there's anything in the Q&A, no questions, good. Chat.
Okay. So I think we have a few questions prepared for Mike. So I can go ahead and ask you some. So is there some way of kind of overcoming this kind of usual shyness, which for us Finns is quite of a nuisance, when trying to kind of convince someone and you're conveying your pitch? So kind of how do you, or can you improve your sort of self-efficacy somehow?
So there's a couple of different things that help. One, knowing your material. And that comes through the preparation, the cycles, the doing the exercises, doing the work. That's one thing. So know your material. And then the other thing that helps is know the venue. So either, if we're doing it online, use the tool beforehand so that you're familiar with where all the buttons are. You're familiar with how to mute and unmute yourself and turn your video on and all this type of thing. So if it's a physical one, because maybe, you know, we're at some point we'll be in post-COVID and we'll once again be doing physical events, go to the venue, go and stand on the stage. There's often an opportunity, if the stage program starts at 10 a.m., get there at 9 and ask, can you go and stand on the stage? If your session is after lunch, there's often a lunch break. Go and ask, can you stand on the stage? Go and stand there, look into the audience, get comfortable or get familiar with the space. But knowing your material, knowing the space, that will lower your stress because it's not something new. Try not to be doing anything new, something for the first time. And then in terms of shyness, this is your life work. If you're not excited about it, why should I in the audience be excited about it? So whatever you need to do to get pumped up, to you know, be more Danish, less Finnish. I'm not looking for you to be like, you know, whoop, 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 loud, crazy American, but convey, massively over exaggerate your conveying of emotions. Be way more excited. If that means you need to do a shot before you get on stage, or you need to pound, you know, shotgun 3 cans of Red Bull, and then obviously take some heart medication to bring it down again. What do you need to do to be able to convey that excitement? Those would be the sort of tips for the nerves. And then you will never stop being nervous. It is a normal human physiological reaction. So what you can do is learn to ride the wave so that you're not in a panic state. It's just like yeah, I'm not super comfortable, but I know I'm not going to die.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard sometimes that it might help that you like go in front of a mirror and really kind of pump yourself up and say that, yeah, I can do this, which is what you kind of described there as well. Okay, so then we have a couple of questions on the Q&A still. So in traditional retail sales, you talk about budgets and money quite early on. What about in pitching for investment? When should you discuss the money topic? Any hints on that?
Right. Okay. So we're diving straight off into the investors thing. Okay. So the most important thing is, if you don't understand how investment works, don't ask for money. Ask for advice. Okay. So if you don't understand term sheets, you don't understand the clauses in term sheets like drag along, tag along, if this is all gibberish, don't ask for money. You're not ready. However, at that point, what you should be asking, if you're looking to meet with investors, is, I'd like to meet because we're thinking of raising a round of investment in 6 months, 9 months, at some point in the future. Because what that does is it sets the expectation for the meeting that this is not about raising an investment round. It's about, do you like them? Because you're going to be working with them for 3, 5, 10 years. So do you like this person? Now, when you're actually raising a round, so that you've got to that point and you are now spending the next 1 to 2 months gathering the participants of a round of investment, and you are interviewing the investors to see who you're joining into your round. At that point, you should have a clear amount that you're raising, whatever that number is. And you should also have very clearly the, what do we call it? What's the business goal you're going to achieve? So we're raising 300,000, 3 million, 30 million, we're raising some number so that in 18 months or 2 years, we will have something out. We will have 3 games out, or we will we'll have grown this game to be something, or that the studio will be able to maintain production of 3 games, or whatever it is. You will be in, the business will be in some future state, some target that ties back into the business numbers.
Yeah, that's quite understandable. You need to know exactly where the money is going. It's your business, obviously. Yeah, and the investors will surely look into those things. Lots of questions here, so I'll just go in a kind of a random order. So what have you learned about pitching for different cultures? Meaning, is there a difference between Japan, France, and the US, for example? I know that the US is a particularly kind of a different beast to tackle.
So in terms of the cultures, the weird thing is that it doesn't really matter where you are. Investors are investors and entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. They almost change, they almost kind of lose their national cultural difference. There isn't much difference between entrepreneurs in any one country or the other. I don't have a great deal of experience of the US. That's mostly secondhand information, but at least for Europe and Africa, where I have seen it mostly in person, there isn't much difference between the entrepreneurs. They're all struggling with the same questions, the same things. The big difference I see, as I understand it, is between Europe, especially Northern Europe, and the US, is that Northern Europe, the pitches are like average to bad, but the technology is amazing. Whereas in the US, the pitches are amazing, but there's no technology. And from an investor point of view, they would rather have the Northern Europe version because it's easier to fix a pitch. You may need to retain a head of marketing. The classic story is from Finland, of course, is Rovio, where they retained their CMO, their mighty eagle, who was a phenomenon on stage, to deliver that. So they brought a team member on who had that stage presence, but that team member had to learn all that stuff. So there is a ramp up time. So you can't just hire someone to be the pitch master. And remember, when you go into meetings with investors, or people will want to see the founders on stage. So you can't kind of hire it out. All you can do is kind of delay it so you can get some more training, so you can do smaller events where there's less risk.
Yeah. And the next question kind of relates to this, and I think you already kind of answered this, but I'm going to ask this anyway. So should this pitching be sort of everyone's responsibility in a startup? So everyone should be able to pitch it at least at some level, or should it be given to someone who's most fluent with words in a startup? So I guess you already kind of answered there, but just as a kind of recap.
Yeah, and to sort of specifically answer that question, everybody needs to be able to deliver an understandable pitch. It's a craft. It's something that can be learned. It's not a dark art. You will have a primary pitcher amongst the founders. You will have somebody who is a little bit better, hates it a bit less. That's the person who should be putting the effort in. They spend 20% of their time getting better at pitching, at the stagecraft. But everybody in the company needs to be able to pitch, because there are only two ways to fail at pitching. The first one is that you're on stage, or that the person you're talking to says some variation on, "I'm sorry, I don't understand." If they didn't understand, you failed at pitching. The other one is you don't turn up. And this is surprisingly really common. Okay, they have, oh, our main pitcher is busy, the person who normally pitches is busy or is double booked, so let's not send anyone. Well, if no one comes, the chances of you winning are zero. Okay, absolutely zero. You're not going to get anything. But as long as you send somebody, some warm body that turns up and manages to produce some words and show some images, if you're the only person who turns up, you win. If everyone else fails to turn up, you win. Now if you also didn't turn up, you can't win. I have seen in most of the startups I've worked at, I've seen where we've had booths at things like Slush, where we just in order to not to burn out everybody, because it's quite exhausting being on a booth, we had the engineers, like back-end engineers, standing on the booth, demoing product to random people, because they cared about the company. Were they the best? No. Did they learn stuff? A little bit, because they were interacting with real end users. Did they enjoy it? Not really. But they were able to do it because we did some practice sessions. So once, we were actually used to do it in that startup about once a month. We'd have like a Friday afternoon beers, and we'd go around and everyone pitched the company. And it was a really good exercise, because we got to understand that, hang on a minute here, the CEO who's been out talking to investors and things, his pitch has started to drift off a little bit. And the engineers are going off in this direction, but the CEO's wandering off over here. And it's like, oh, we're splitting up. We caught that early, because everyone is explaining how they think the company works and what the problem is and who the customer is and so on.
Yeah, then a couple of more questions. Are there some like alternatives to actual pitching? So do you like really you just need to know how to pitch your business, or are there some like alternatives to this? But my kind of gut feeling is that you just have to know how to deliver kind of different kinds of pitches.
So the thing is, if with games especially, because you're doing effectively a B2C type thing, you can do it with marketing. You can get it, social media marketing, videos. That can replace a percentage. But pitching is a nice, quick way to test something out. So within a few days, a week, depending on how good you are at pitching and how familiar you are with the craft, you can test out a new message, a new audience group. So historically, we've always been focused on people who like multi-platformers. Well, what happens if we have, infinite runners? Does the concept resonate more with infinite runner players than platformers? You can make a pitch to test that out without having to do any graphics, without having to do any videos. It's the lightest way to test things, is to build a pitch. Now, if you're not used to pitching, it may not seem that way, but in terms of, energy and effort for the company, it is the lightest way to test things. Build a pitch, go out there, pitch it to 5, 10, 20 people, see what the reaction is. You're A/B testing with something that's quick to build, because it's just some words, not even pictures, just words.
Yeah. In addition to the kind of the big idea and the pitch delivery, and kind of the money and things like that, how much weight should there be on kind of the entrepreneur and the team when investors are evaluating the pitch or thinking about kind of investing into this team?
So there's an old saying that investors invest in 3 things: the team, the team, and the team. Because in the early days, that's all you've got, is the team. And it's not really true. What investors invest in is traction, the team, and the team. So they want to see something that resembles numbers, that resembles there's a business that they can, because they are buying a piece of a business. That's what investors do, is they're buying a percentage of the business because they believe that it's going to grow and their money will help that business grow faster. The mistake that people make is when they present the team, they show, here's John and he's done this and he's worked at this famous company, and here's Sally and she's done this and she's got these skills and worked at these famous company. I can get that from looking at your webpage or LinkedIn. It doesn't tell me anything, doesn't excite me. So what you're trying to uncover is get to the why for the team. Why you as a group of individuals excited about, yet another roguelike thing, or yet another infinite runner, or yet another, yes, you've all got unique, never done before thing. I'm sure. But other than that, what excites you to come together? Is it you all like badminton, or taking long walks across the ice, or you all like skydiving? Yeah, something that draws you, makes you a team. That why, an unfair advantage, something that's difficult to replicate. Maybe you've known each other for 10 years. You've worked together in 2 different companies. Okay, that the relationship is built, and is it a friendship? Investors usually don't like family relationships, husband, wife, brother, sister sort of things, because when, not if, the company fails and it goes horribly wrong, it gets very messy, because now you have like relationships in there, not just business. So where you've got that less attractive reason, don't hide it, but don't push it to the front. So leave surnames off, for instance, and that's everyone's surname. And then what's the why? And it's not because we're married. We both like, all 4 of us like puppies. And then they'll check you out and they'll go, hang on a minute here, you 2 have got the same surname. Yeah, we're married. Oh, okay. Because at that point, they're already invested. But if you bring up we're married front and center, they're like, nope, we don't invest in married couples. And then you look at their portfolio, and yes, they do. So it's never lie. Just, you don't have to tell everything in the first meeting. So the thing that excites investors is they can't understand, they can't see from looking at your LinkedIn profile, your why, your motivation, the thing that causes you to want to put in the long hours, to push through the downs, and there are many downs in startups, and to get to that other side. And that's usually, it's a vague thing. It's a very hard thing. The Finns have got a great way of discovering this. What they do is they take 1 or 2 bottles of Koskenkorva, they go to the sauna, and then they open up, and you have to have brutally honest conversations amongst yourselves. And then how do you package that so that it doesn't scare people away?
Yeah, that's true. One question relates to kind of this, the atmosphere of the pitch. So for example, we often hear jokes and kind of ease of storytelling in presentations, but kind of how do you maintain or determine the right balance when you're talking to, let's say, investors? Should you be like more serious and formal, or can you kind of include some like jokes and stuff like that into your pitch?
So my thing is my advice is always be yourself. Everyone else is taken. So if you are naturally quite funny, if your hobby is stand-up comedy, you can tell jokes. If your hobby isn't stand-up comedy, stay away from jokes. They will go wrong. They will offend someone. I'm really good at this. The number of events I've been to that somebody's got offended, and then they went, actually, no, he's not racist or xenophobic. He just hates everyone. But that takes time to build that understanding. And in a pitch, you don't have time, you have 3 minutes. So stay away from humor or jokes, because they tend not to work. And in fact, they can actually go completely the other way and destroy your credibility. Storytelling is another craft. Now, with games companies, there are more storytellers than you would expect in a more mainstream technology startup. But storytelling is a craft that you need to learn and practice. So my suggestion is, when you're starting out in pitching, don't try and learn two crafts at once. So deliver the dry, sequential facts in a sequence that makes sense. And I've got a video for this, my suggested sequence. Which hopefully the link will get posted somewhere. If it doesn't, I'll put it in the Discord. So just deliver that in that sequence. It's not exciting. It's not going to win anything, but it's understandable. It answers the first set of questions. It will get you the 20-minute meeting where you can start, your personality can come through. You can discover, do you gel with this person? What's their sense of humor? What do they find funny? Are you more relaxed? Are you a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops guy, or are you suited and booted? That's you. The person you're meeting, what are they like? They may like wearing suits. Cool. How do they cope with you rocking up in a t-shirt and a hoodie? Most people nowadays are pretty, especially up here in this part of the world, most people are pretty relaxed. But it's what do you feel comfortable in? Be yourself. Don't try and play a character, because that will go wrong. Until you've mastered pitching, which means you've done a few hundred pitches, then you are like a solid journeyman. At that point, you will have already started to explore storytelling and storytelling techniques. You may even have started to use some humor, but that comes as you grow in the craft. So my thing is, get the basics right. It's a craft. It's a thing that requires lots and lots of calendar time, lots of repetition, and you will slowly learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Not everything works for everyone. So you have to learn, try things in the safe environment where you can fail and the consequences aren't large, so that you're not standing on, the main stage at Slush, trying something for the first time. You're like, oh, let's see if it works. Because usually it goes wrong.
Yeah, totally agree. One thing that I've also learned before about pitching is that you need to kind of raise interest of the audience, like from the very start, because you don't have that much time to kind of gain the interest of investors. For example, they may listen to like 10 or 20 pitches a day, and that's something that you need to do very early on to make them kind of listen through to your pitch. So how do you think about this? Kind of how do you raise the interest and keep people listening to your pitch?
Right. So my thing is that the investors, if they're at a startup event, will listen to 3 minutes of any old garbage. It's just because that's their job. It's how hard are they listening? So one thing when I explain it is, you start with some sort of opener. So you should start with something that's a hook. And often people think it's a question. Questions are a problem because they put the audience into their own mind. And for me, it's this, what's the job of the pitch? That's interesting, tell me more. So you hook somebody, you have like 3-5 seconds to be more interesting than the internet. So you hook them, and it's often the best way to do that is a bold statement, or something that's maybe a bit controversial. Clickbait titles, for want of a better phrase. That 5 seconds buys you 30 seconds, which buys you a minute and a half. So your job is to have the best stuff up front, as close to the beginning as possible. So the classic failure mode is, hi, I'm person from company. Your name is not the most important and more exciting thing. And even worse, if you have a good person running it, a good organizer, The first of those, next up, we have person from company, give them big ray. And then they come on, hi, I'm person from company. Like, not in the moment. You should introduce yourself. You should explain why you are interesting as a person within the context of the team, but that comes later. That's probably not the most interesting thing. So it's get a hook, some sort of clickbaity title. Actually, clickbait is, top 10 things. Clickbait style, not actual clickbait. So some controversy. So if I'm doing this and I'm looking at an audience that isn't as engaged or is being told they have to be there, I would do a title something like, top 6 ways to fuck up a pitch. Oh, he swore. He used a bad word. So it'd be F star up a pitch. And then, the first one I'd be is like, don't turn up, you idiots. So I'd be a little insulting, a little challenging. But that's me. That's my personality, my style of presenting. So your opener has to like reach out, grab them and not let them go. And then slowly you ease up and see, do they run away or are they coming forward for more?
Yeah. Really interesting stuff and really good questions and good points all over. I think we are running out of time for this. So thank you very much, Mike, for your presentation.